this. And then I will start the broadcast.
Awesome.
And we'll give it a second to post its way through to the system. And we'll take that live. And there we go. We're live. All right, those of you guys who are watching this on the Guild, give me a note. Let me know if you can hear me. Those of you guys who are here in GoToWebinar, you can hear me okay? And you can see on your screen everything is good. Just give me a yes, no. Quick sound check. Hey, Isaac. Hey, Narcissus. Hey, Johannes. And you hear the motorcycles? Spring break. Joseph. Ruben. All right. Okay. So let's just switch this. So those of you who are in the Guild, you don't need to see my mug. And I have not slept. I slept 3 hours last night. So we do not want to see my mug. We'll look at Anya's screen, which is much prettier. So thank you, Anya, for being here. Let me clear that out of the back. And so this is the first time we've got to chat. And I remember seeing your work, and I think it was the hand-painted work that just blew my mind. So why don't you just introduce and tell me about yourself. What are you doing right now? Work, fun, all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm an environment artist at Creative Assembly. So
Yep.
I've been there for just over a year and a few months-ish. It's my first game industry job. So I started there as a trainee for a year, and now I am an associate artist there. And yeah, in my spare time, I do a bit of hand painting and a bit of 2D work and a bit of oil painting, whatever takes my fancy, really.
Awesome. So what did you do in terms of your schooling? Where did you go to school? How did you educate yourself?
Yes. Well, here in the UK, we do A-levels. So we do GCSEs up until you're 16 years old. And then from 16 to 18, you do A-levels. So you choose a set of subjects that you want to study. So I did biology, chemistry, English literature, and art, and studied those for 2 years. And then I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I stumbled across a university course for game art design.
Yeah.
So I checked that out and it seemed pretty cool. I'd never done 3D modeling or anything like that before. But I got an offer there and I haven't really looked back. And I've been doing game art ever since, and I'm 22 now.
Awesome. What attracted you to game art?
Ooh, well.
It's interesting because lots of people, they come from all directions, right? Some people are into the sci-fi stuff, and some people are into Blizzard, and some people are, into VR. But, could you say what it was that attracted you?
Well, I never played like Blizzard games or anything like that. So it's kind of funny how I've gone more like stylized now. I always played Red Dead Redemption and Halo and more realistic games. But the main thing that I think really attracted me to games at first was the skyboxes. I really liked skies in games, and I thought they were really pretty.
Okay.
So I don't know. I guess I always wondered how that was done. And once I realized that you could study making art for games as an actual subject, I was just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Because I wanted to do art, I knew, but I didn't know that there were like jobs out there beyond just sort of fine art and stuff like that. And yeah, I liked realistic games because that's what I played. But once I got to university and realized sort of what directions you can go in, I just always found myself going towards like more stylized, colorful stuff. I don't know, it was quite organic, like the way I just sort of moved in that direction. There was never really any confusion for me about like what kind of style I should go for or anything like that.
Nice. You just kind of started doing stuff and then seeing where it went.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about this piece that's in front of us. So you said you do a lot of hand painting, right?
Yes. Partially because I find it easier and I like avoiding the hassle of like baking. Because
I think
that's
many of
where
us would
stuff always
agree.
goes wrong. Yeah. So I like to avoid a bit of hassle, but my more recent project that I'm working on is actually sculpting. So I'll do a bit of everything, but this piece is just hand painted, nice and simple, using 3D coat and Photoshop.
Hmm.
I like hand painting in 3D coats. But yeah, I like doing stuff in Unreal Engine because I like how flexible it can be. You can sort of cheat a little bit with lighting and things like that.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of lights and things in here which you couldn't really get away with in things like Marmoset Viewer. You
Hmm.
can't sort of add like a million lights wherever you want. So I like to, yeah, and things like putting a tree in there to cast shadows and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, just like nice, simple, hand painted fun.
Hmm. All right, and there's just a little bit of a lag, just so you know. So if there's a lot of rotation, it takes a second for it to kind of update.
No problem. I'll put it there. I'll leave it there.
Okay, cool. All right, how much can you tell us about your job? And so I say that, because everybody's got different levels. So just let me know if we're overreaching here. But if you could describe a little bit about what you do, like what a day looks like for you, that'd be great.
Sure.
Is it production right away, meetings? What does it look like for an associate environment artist?
Yeah, sure. Well, for me, because I am sort of a junior artist, a lot of the day is just production stuff for me.
Hmm.
I usually get put into a project after it's already started, like a few months after it's already started. And I will just be creating assets. And because what I work on is Total War game campaign maps. So I don't know if anyone has played a Total War game, but there are battles which are realistic and the campaign maps which are stylized. And they're kind of more like a stylized top-down view of a world. So you can cover a broader picture with less art, I guess.
Hmm.
So I'm making sort of big chunky cities and mountains, and we're trying to sort of cover an entire geographical location or country. So rivers, cities, trees, terrain textures. So I just do a bit of everything in that sense. I'm not sort of particularly specialist in anything,
Hmm.
which is really nice for me. I enjoy just being able to do a little bit of everything, and because it's top down and you view it from quite far away, you don't have to make it super detailed, which is something I don't particularly enjoy. So I do enjoy sort of covering a broader picture, color palettes, and just making nice overall compositions.
Got it. And what do you think makes you really successful at your job? Like, what is the one thing that helps you get your job done? And what I'm really looking
Mm,
for is, and you may be able to remember, like 2 years ago, before you got the job, it's hard to have a sense of what you're supposed to be doing. And so, what is it that really helps you achieve in your job today?
I'd say that I am quite good at sort of covering a broad spectrum of like a place, as in I like to create overall compositions and color palettes,
Hmm.
and I don't tend to get bogged down in the nitty gritty of things. So when you're trying to create art for a huge area, you can't just create like one camera angle and focus on that. You have to, there's a huge space that you're having to cover. So trying to create like cool little compositions and things like that. And I can do that quite quickly, and just make stuff look good on the bigger picture. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, really. I'm not very good at saying what I'm good at.
I know.
Um,
I know that was going to be. I knew that was going to
Very
be a
hard.
hard one, for us artists, especially. But what I got out
Yeah,
of that was that you're flexible, and
yeah. I
you're
try my
comfortable
best.
shifting focus a lot. Because I imagine, as an
Yeah.
associate artist, one of the things that they're asking you to do is, number one, the stuff that they don't want to do, right? Number two, the stuff that might just need to happen right now. Like, there's probably a little bit of busy work, but you've got amazing skills here. So I'm sure you have your niche, but is there some element of busy work that's involved in that?
When you say busy work, do you mean just getting stuff done?
Yeah, just getting stuff done. In some cases, it'd be baking. It'd be fixing meshes or anything of that nature.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. Like sometimes the team that I work in is really quite small. There's
Mm-hmm.
only like at any time maybe four of us maximum working on these campaign maps.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there'll be days or weeks where everyone's away, and so it's me that's left to sort of keep everything together on the campaign map art side of things. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll end up I'll be the one sort of liaising with other people around the studio and trying to get broad strokes done on the campaign. And there are just days where it's just head down making trees or head down making buildings. And there is busy work in that sense. There's days where you don't get anything done, and that's okay too. But mostly it is actually like sort of a big list of tasks that I've got for myself from either things that I think I need to do or things that other people have told me to do, and
Yeah.
I'll just burn through that list of stuff.
That's great. Was there a time when you just didn't think that this was going to work, that you just weren't going to be able to get that job
Uh, to get the job at Creative Assembly.
in any job?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that worry and negativity in the back of your mind, I guess.
Hmm.
I've always sort of tried to trust in the fact that things will just work out
Hmm.
in some way, shape, or form. I was quite lucky in that at university we've ended up with a lot of contacts coming out of university because a lot of the students that graduate ahead of you and go on to studios themselves, and you have them as contacts. So that definitely helped me. But yeah, I was absolutely prepared after university to go and move back home and just focus on my portfolio until eventually I'd pick up some job, any job. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but that's fine too. Like for me to move home and or just pick up some job and just grind away at a portfolio, I was absolutely ready to do that too.
That's great. Yes. I think many of us could understand that. Talk to me about these dioramas that you created, because level 80 was kind of the thing, and I know this is a long time ago in our industry. Anyways, I think it's what 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. Yeah, I see it right here. Um, how did that happen that you ended up making an article for level 80? And I'm asking because one of the things that I advise everybody to do is do articles, write, do tutorials, do videos, do
Yeah.
gumroads, do all of that stuff, because my entire career comes from one article I wrote that Ofer, who,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh.
he develops Pixlogic, Ofer develops ZBrush. He read the one article, that was it. And, it took a little while, but they hired me and it was entirely on that one article. So
That's
talk to me.
great.
Tell me about it. So tell me about the experience of writing this. Like, how did this come about that you were doing something at level 80?
Yeah, well, I've had a few things on there now, and the first thing that ever happened with the level 80 thing was I kept a blog when I was at university. Every week I would update this blog with what I've been doing on my university projects,
Hmm.
and I was always very regimented in doing that. And at the end of a project, I made, I think, one big blog post talking about my work, um, just a little 3-week project I'd done for university. And then that got put on 80 level. And I was like, oh, cool, that's a surprise. I didn't expect anything that I've done to sort of end up on there. And that was in the early days of 80 level.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone really had heard of it. And then it must have been like a year later when I'd done another project. The guy that runs it, I can't remember his name, but he emailed me and just asked for me to do sort of a breakdown for him. But that all came off of the back of firstly posting on my blog on a weekly basis and sharing that,
Mm.
and also cross-posting that on various Facebook groups, posting it on my personal Facebook page. I don't know where else I would have posted it. Polycount, I think Polycount definitely helped. But obviously he'd picked it up somewhere, and that came off the back of that. And since then, I've done another one for him. And again, I expect that probably came from posting on Polycount, I think it was, or maybe the Level Up Facebook page. But yeah, it all came from sort of self-marketing online.
Awesome. That makes sense. So he knew that you could handle posting and you could handle writing because you had actually been doing that. That's not something that,
Yeah,
they were all in doubt of your capacity to do.
yeah. I wish I could still bring myself to keep up a blog, because I think it really did sort of give me, whether it was a small audience or not, there were people that were like genuinely interested in what I was doing. And
Hmm.
no matter how small that audience that you have is, something will always come out of that, like the 80 level thing, or just people that keep up with you for like, I think I had that blog for 3 years, and there were people on there that were keeping up with me for the whole 3 years that I was posting on there. And even if I came back like a year later to post something, they would comment on it. So it definitely helps you sort of be found on there, in the big pond that is the internet.
Hmm. That's great. Okay, good. And did that affect your career, your job at Creative Assembly, or your career potential?
I'd say it did, yeah, because posting on my blog was picked up by uh, not only tutors at the uni who could see that I was reliable with writing a blog every week, but
Mm.
also past students who had gone on to work. So I ended up getting my job at Creative Assembly through a referral from a previous student at my university,
Yeah.
who then worked at Creative Assembly, and he'd seen my blog, and I'd also been asking him for critique. But the blog was definitely something that people would come to me and say, "Oh, I've seen your blog." So it's definitely something, if you have the time to do it, writing a blog gets you out there a bit, but also it sort of helps you solidify things in your mind when you put sort of pen to paper and
Yeah.
write down your thoughts on something.
Got
It's
it.
really important to do, I think.
Yeah, that sounds great. And Kamal is asking, does the blog still exist?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I haven't updated it for a while. I can find the link. It's on WordPress.
The attempted game art of Anya the artist.
Yes, that's it.
There
Oh,
you
you found it
go.
before me.
I got a couple pages up here. If you guys
I
want,
was trying to find the link. Yeah, feel free to share that because I
yeah,
couldn't find it myself.
just Google attempted game art of Anya the artist, Anya, and it'll come right up. Or you just Google her name and you'll be able to find it real quick. And I'll post it over here in chat.
Yeah, go for it. I always feel like I should keep updating it, and you can see I occasionally go back and try and revive it, but I just never ever manage to keep up posting every week or even every month on there at the moment.
Yeah. Well, it served its purpose, and you're doing what you wanted to do, which is your job. So
Yeah.
that's great. So, is it a long day, a short day? Is it do you have energy to do your own work when you come home?
Uh, on and off, definitely. So I've been trying to do YouTube videos
Yeah.
recently, and it's definitely difficult. But I sort of have periods where I'm very happy to come home from work and like get my head down, and
Yeah.
sometimes I'll do digital painting because it's like nice and different from doing 3D all day, or
Right.
sometimes I'll feel really passionate about a 3D project that I've got on the go. Um, Other days, like the last few weeks, for instance, I've just not wanted anything to do with 3D, and I'll just sort of come home and curl up on the sofa. I've been a bit burned out, I think, but
Mm.
I've sort of learned to just accept that recently. But I really enjoy work, and I still, yeah, I do have the energy to come home. There's something about I've got like a 25-minute drive home after work, and being
Mm-hmm.
able to sit in silence as I drive and just sort of contemplate my day, or even just not think, is
Mm.
quite nice before I can sort of come back and do a bit more work or painting, whatever I feel like doing.
Mm. That makes that. All right. Okay, so let me see if you guys got any questions. Sari, you have seen that, and Kamal has got this. All right, gather up some questions for me, guys. And then, does anybody want to get some eyes on their work? If so, we can see if we can get Anya to look at a couple of pieces, and just make sure you provide a
Yeah, that'd be
direct
cool.
link to the artist awake. Or what might be wise is to get me an art station, but you may not have your art station, because if it's artist awake, um, I have to show it. All right. So Isaac is asking about hand painted texturing. So what would be awesome?
Yeah.
I don't know if you were prepared to show anything or not, but what can you share with us about your process for creating these dioramas and hand painting these textures?
Okay. Well, a lot of it, I guess, is just sort of practice.
Hmm.
If I take this piece on my screen as an example, I guess as my sort of latest hand painted thing,
Yeah.
um, a lot of it is just trial and error, I find. The main things that I have found are um, avoid very dark colors. If you go towards black, it can get a bit noisy. Like this tower here started off with very dark lines between the bricks,
Hmm.
and it didn't really work very well. I think I'm trying to think like sort of resources that I looked at for when I was trying to practice hand painting, but I'm really bad at looking at resources. The main things that I found was if I light something from above and then sort of bake out a really quick AO map, literally like no painting on it or anything,
Hmm.
no sculpt, just bake a really quick rubbish AO map in 3ds Max. I can use that as a base just to get some like shadowing and stuff in, and also gradients. So I can get the texture for the tower here and show what I mean. Where is it? Here it is. So if that's loaded,
Yep.
this is the texture for the tower. It looks really complicated, but this is painted in 3D coat, so it's very nice for working without seams. And I definitely recommend 3D coat for avoiding seams. But what I did was after I'd done some quite quick monochrome painting,
Hmm.
I baked out a map that was black and white. I might have it. I'll see if I can find it.
Okay.
But it's something that you can just overlay really quickly over a piece, because a tower, a tower like this is quite complicated to try and paint a gradient onto. When it's unwrapped, it just gets quite fiddly. So I took a black to white gradient and put it onto my low poly and just flattened the UVs from the front. So it just had a gradient going up it, and you can bake that into a map, which I'm going to find. I'm determined now. I'll just look really quickly in here.
Yeah.
If I can't find it in a sec, I'll just give up.
Yeah. Not to worry. Sari, I'll ask you a question here in a sec.
Yeah, sure, no problem. But yeah, mainly I avoid black and try and keep everything as saturated as possible.
Hmm.
So I've got my texture here. So if I make this, right. So this is what I got out of 3ds Max when I baked a gradient
Okay.
onto it. So that just saves me the effort of having to paint a full gradient down the tower myself.
Hmm.
So I put it as an overlay, and I sort of changed the colors of it a little bit and saturated it. But you can see immediately that is adding a gradient. You can particularly see it at the top right.
Yeah.
It darkens the bottom of the tower and lightens the top of it. And so you get very nice natural gradients. It's super subtle when you look at it in Unreal Engine.
Mm-hmm.
But without gradients, things just become sort of visual noise. I mean, anyone listening to this who's interested in hand painting has probably heard always use gradients. It's a big thing. And also keeping the levels of detail consistent, I found, is a really important one as well. You don't want to sort of make some grass that's really detailed and then make a building next to it that has like absolutely no detail, because once you view them up close next to each other, there's just no comparison. It becomes like very ugly, and that can create noise, which you don't want in something hand painted. I tend to avoid any kind of noisiness or texture, sort of like grittiness,
Mm-hmm.
and just keep everything nice and smooth.
Kamal's asking, do you use any normal maps to support your lighting and geometry, or do you just use the albedo / color?
I haven't used any normal maps for this. Sometimes what I will do is for things like foliage,
Yeah.
I will just bake out a really simple mesh that's literally just sort of a curved front for the grass. It's kind of hard to explain without sort of, I can get up Photoshop and explain it. Let me grab my pen.
Is there any, do you have 3D coat on there? Because it might be really nice to showcase people this process. 3D coat's one of the things I don't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can show 3D coat. What I mean about the grass is, like, if you're doing a blade of grass,
Yeah.
I will create a high poly mesh that is just curved like this.
Yes.
And that will just mean that you can get light catching it as it comes, and you get that side darker. But in terms of like normal maps, I will just keep them as like simple as possible if I do. Again, I just avoid any noise, because I used to sort of add all sorts of grittiness to my textures, but that will just completely overwhelm any hand painting you want to do. So generally, no, I don't use normal maps unless they're very simple.
Got it. All right. So the biggest issue is not normal maps. It's just making sure that the geometry has some element of curvature and is not flat, because that's, big. That's
Yeah.
the death of it, I imagine, because your paintings are so soft. That would be an instant hard line.
Yeah, I mean, you can see on this piece, even in Unreal Engine, if I get up close, you can see the hard edges of my mesh.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, that would perhaps be somewhere that I would use a normal map to soften this edge.
Right.
Even if it is just like a super simple normal map with just like some chamfering in the high poly,
Yep.
like at the absolute most basic level.
That makes sense. All right, so we're going to get some 3D coat.
Yes.
Great.
Let's find a mesh.
I tell you, I was going to actually do a class on 3D coat. I had a guy who, a friend of mine, who's just an amazing artist. But then right at the time I was going to launch the class, Pixelogic contacted me to beta test this new Sculptress Pro thing. And I was like, shoot.
Oh, no.
Can't do it, because it'd be competition to them, and they get pissy about stuff like that. So
Right, yeah.
So good. I'm glad we get to see this. It's something I haven't given you guys, the crew. So it's good to get this on the outside.
I'm trying to pick a mesh. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Hang on, So I go File, and I will. Can I open a mesh? Oh, here we go. Right, so I've got ones that I've already started. I'll open my building.
Okay.
So what I'll do is, if I want to paint something, I'll just give that a minute to load.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Are you opening or importing when you do this?
So in this case, I'm just opening, because I'm opening a previous file.
Yes, got it.
But I would go File and Import, and then Model for per pixel painting.
Got it.
And so if you bring in a model that is already unwrapped, you can see that on the right-hand side that the unwrap is showing, and it's tiling it but that's because I've done it as it's a 1x2
Okay.
unwrap, so it's just a bit of a funny shape. So it'll bring it in and it will just be grey, no texture on it, but you can import a texture. If you go textures and import, you can import a diffuse map. Say you've already made a block out or something, just like a quick scribble. So the main things that I tend to do in here is use there's a really cool mode for Photoshop projection. So this is my favorite thing ever about it. So if I can color pick using V, and then if I want to, say, paint this area, which I've just scribbled out, I can put Control Alt P, and what that does is opens Photoshop for you with a view of that model. And then you can turn off the light map layer that it gives you. And then you can literally just paint in here. So I can do whatever I want and just save that. And when I reopen in here, it loads the texture up again. And it's on the model.
That's just like Z app link in ZBrush. That makes
is that like Go Z, which I have on? I have that 3ds Max.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, this is good. And so what's the advantage of 3D Coat for you, as opposed to, let's say, Mudbox has some great texturing? Not everybody's a fan of ZBrush's poly painting. You know, it doesn't go to the UVs, so that's a big issue. But what's the advantage in 3D Coat for you?
Well, partially, I am very bad at picking up new software. Okay. So I do use ZBrush and things like that.
Yeah.
And I have used the poly painting in there. But for this, for more like sort of simple hand painted stuff, I just find this software is quite nice to use. Just you get a simple round brush. You just hit a quick shortcut to go between Photoshop and 3D Coat. And it's just, for me, like a nice sort of convenient, simple software to work with. I use it for retopping as well, and the voxel sculpting is nice, again, for people that don't really want to delve into the depths of ZBrush. If you're just feeling a bit lazy, or you want to do something just like sort of, I find that with ZBrush, I can lose my creativity a little bit because I do get a bit sort of lost in the sort of UI and the terms that are used. And at the heart of it, I'm not a very technical person. I'm an artistic person, and I'm really bad at the technical side of things. And I just want to make nice textures sometimes and not have to open ZBrush and confuse myself. Yeah.
Now, Sari was asking earlier about your color palette. And so this might be a really good moment for us to talk about it. Like, this is a fairly uniform color. But how do you go about working on color and establishing, these harmonies?
Well, the reason that the tower is quite uniform, there's like not much going on in terms of color, is because once I've got it in this scene in Unreal Engine, it is in the middle of an extremely colorful, quite overwhelming scene. So I wanted it to be sort of a focal point, but I also wanted it to be kind of a place of rest in the middle of this quite busy scene. So the color is quite neutral. I've got a gradient going up it from sort of a pinky color to a more purpley color. But I wanted the overall scene to have a gradient in terms of like color palette going up it. So the water at the bottom is blue, and the algae and plants are sort of green blue, and it goes through to green and yellow green, orange, and up to sort of a red and pink. And once I factored the building into that, the building, I think, did just need to be a bit more neutral. So I kind of like working through the color wheel a little bit. It sort of gives a nice sense of harmony. Even the falling petals that you can see, I've set the particles up to turn more, they turn red as they fall, just like sort of moves through a gradient. And they sort of go like an orangey red color. So for me, I think you can kind of work with any color palette that you want if you work through a sort of harmonious kind of color wheel kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I love that
Um,
idea. Working through the color palette.
yeah, just I've found that like pretty much any colors do work in that way,
Hmm.
because you can just make the colors riff off each other through
Hmm.
like as they move through the color wheel, and by nature they will look quite harmonious. Um, you can always sort of throw in a color that contrasts with it, like standard color theory stuff. Um, but yeah, I never sort of had anyone when I was at university say to me, like, work through the color wheel so much. It was always like tertiary color palettes, and there were always like these rules, and I just was just like, I want to work through the color wheel. um, but yeah, I don't know, just I always tend to oversaturate colors, and because I do that, you also want to kind of riff off of that with some desaturated colors.
Yeah.
So I will add in some like, for instance, on the boat, the area of pretty much plain white. The tree trunk is a very desaturated color, and the stairs are quite desaturated.
That's great.
Um,
I'm glad you were talking about that because that's one of the issues we're confronting right now is what's the difference between hue, saturation, value, and how you make the
yeah,
most of it.
yeah, it's quite a tough one. um, for me, definitely saturation is really important.
Yeah.
Um, I love creating a really saturated environment and then adding in like white rocks, and areas of black and white. So I always like adding in like checkered floors or something like that, because when you look at the bright colors next to the stark black and white, there's just something about it that's really, it's very hard for me to sort of express it, but there is just something really nice about black and white and then a nice bright color palette next to it.
Yeah. That's great. Okay. And then if I'm correct, the shadows, you've definitely colored shadows. Like it looks like those are almost blue.
Yes, I can get the lights in here.
Yeah, good. Because Kamal was just asking about your typical light setup, and that's a lot of light.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of lights. So I tend to get quite carried away with point lights. If I turn all of these off, you can kind of see the subtle difference that they make.
Ah,
They
okay.
take away the shadows are quite sort of grey looking without the point lights in them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for a diorama, this works. Of course, for an actual real-time piece of art, this amount of point lights is never feasible.
Right.
But for being creative, it is fun to play about with point lights,
Mm-hmm.
and use them to illuminate shadows with color. If I turn off these point lights and go to my light sources, so by default, you'll have one light source in Unreal Engine, and I just use a second light source pointing in the opposite direction to kind of, it's very subtle, but it just kind of brightens up the shadows a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the light colors are, I think this is pretty much pure white. Yeah, pure white for the main light, and then a more yellowy color for the one pointing in the opposite direction. And then the blue color is coming from my skylight, which I can't turn on and off. But that's putting light back into the shadows. You don't, for some reason, have a skylight by default in Unreal Engine, which is really annoying, but you can just drop a skylight in there. And I always tend to turn my lights up quite bright. I'm not sure what the standard values are anymore, but my lights are just quite bright, and I will avoid creating really dark shadows. You can see that overall, in terms of like contrast between my areas of shadow and my areas of light,
Mm.
it's not super contrasty. I didn't want to sort of overwhelm the eye with so much going on in terms of like plant life, and sort of stuff in the water. I didn't want to have really dark shadows as well to confuse the eye.
Yeah. Can you show me the like where the point lights are positioned? So I get the main lights and I get the skylight, but like where are you positioning these point lights?
Sure. So
I
they're in
started to see them.
areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see them floating around here.
Yeah.
So I will use, like, for instance, in here, I've got these guys. that are just illuminating the underside of the archway.
Uh-huh.
And I've got another one in here also illuminating the inside of the archway. I wanted this one here, excuse me, this one to sort of look like water was reflecting light up into the underside of this building. But also I wanted to sort of create like edge lights coming from behind the diorama. So if I just turn them all off again.
Are they pretty much all in one plane? It looked like they were all in a circle around one basic plane.
Yeah, they are sort of in a circle around the diorama. I have one sort of up inside trees and stuff as well, so you can make the most of the subsurface scattering from the trees. But yeah, I just want them sort of in areas where there's quite a dark shadow, and I just want to put some color back into that shadow. It gives it a more kind of mystical kind of feel than if there wasn't any light in these shadows. It just gives it a more of a glow. So I've just put them pretty much anywhere that I feel they need to be. Anywhere that sort of looks a little bit boring and I feel could use more color. That's the main reason I use them, is to just inject color back into the scene.
I love that. That's great. Okay. And it adds that magical element. You're right. Because otherwise it's just, shadow. And then, there's this illumination over here.
You can really sort of play about with the lights.
Yeah.
It's really fun in Unreal Engine. It's the main reason I use it.
All right. And Kamal's giving you thanks. Joseph is asking, is this based on an initial sketch or 2D concept art?
Yes, it is. I can show you that.
Yeah.
I always like to do sort of my own little concepts for work that I do.
Yeah.
So I have all of the concepts I did here. So it came from just a doodle, really. If I want to create some 3D art, I will usually just doodle stuff until something really feels right. And usually that comes about from messing about on Pinterest and trying to find inspiration. So I found this building here that I really liked, which is based on a bridge. And I was experimenting with trying to have the entire bridge in a diorama, but I knew that would be too big and it would be too much work to take on. So then I experimented with sort of breaking pieces off the bridge. And then I was thinking what if someone lived in there, and how would they get up there? And they'd have stairs. So throughout all of this, I was going between looking at images online, doodling in Photoshop, and creating 3D blockouts that I would just throw into Unreal Engine and light and then overpaint. So this was the final thing that came of that. Have I got? Yeah, I think I've got.
Anya, can you hold on?
Got a list.
Second? Hold on one.
Yeah, of course.
One sec, guys.
Oh, messy Photoshop. Grab some Pinterest as well.
There we go. All right. Okay. Sorry. Now I'm back. So you were saying you're Pinterest coming up with ideas, and then.
Yeah. So I've grabbed my Pinterest board that I created.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just stuff that I liked, really. I don't think I was going in any particular direction at the time. I knew that I wanted to create a scene with water and that I wanted it to have lots of plants in it.
Yeah.
I think this was the initial image that I was looking at. It's quite small, but and then it just went from there, and I found this bridge that I really liked. And yeah, I just experimented with 3D blockouts. So I made this 3D blockout in Unreal Engine, and sort of ended up cutting pieces away, so you can see the way up into the diorama at the time was a ladder.
Yeah.
But that compositionally didn't work very well because I wanted something that kind of flowed up into the diorama.
Yeah.
So this is just like a super messy sketch that I did with like photos that I took of a tree that I found that I really liked. And I just sort of started painting over bits and cutting bits away, trying to make the scene as compact and quick to work on as possible because I wanted this to be a quick project. It wasn't in the end at all, but it never is.
Yes. Yes.
So, and yeah, like adding gradients onto stuff as well. So you can sort of see here, I was like adding gradients into things, which is quite important.
Yeah, actually, that's a big trick for Dylan Cole. Like, you know, that's how it's one of the keys to his design is gradients, gradients.
Yeah, gradients are super important.
Yep.
So if I get this out of the way, and yeah, this is what I ended up doing in the end. And I just had fun painting it, and then decided in the end that I did want to work on this. So then the next thing I do is make a list of all the props in the scene, just so I can sort of it's like a management thing. Cool. I like making lists and managing stuff. So for this, I was like, we're going to have a tree. We're going to have yellow flowers. And then I'd research what yellow flowers there are. Sort of potential fauna I could add in and animate, things like that. And then I thought about it like in terms of, let me get this one, in terms of things that how they'd look closer up, and also did some experiments for like the texture style I'd want to go for. So I had fun with thinking about the colors of the flowers, and how they would sort of look when they were sat together in a scene. And sort of just, yeah, prepared to start making the actual 3D scene. So from that, I started making the final 3D piece using my concepts to refer to.
That's great. And this was actually a bit of a surprise to me to see. What are the X marks for? Those are the ones you decided not to do?
That was me ticking things off as I made them.
Sweet.
Yeah, I'm super organized. I tried to be anyway.
That was great, though. I mean, I actually didn't anticipate you going into that much depth, and that's probably something that makes your life easier in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. I do like sort of definitely creating the lists. It gives me a way of just planning what I'm going to do. Like, is this project going to take months or weeks? And I can then immediately see when I'm starting to get a little bit carried away and be like, okay, calm down now. We're not going to have all of these flowers or whatever.
Yeah. And
so this piece in the end took like eight months to finish.
There you go. That was the question.
So, yes, it was a bit longer than I had anticipated it being, but between sort of doing other things and getting a bit burned out and then recovering from a burnout, it's just how it goes after work and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about burnout, because this is something that we have to, we have to deal with, because let's say before like the film and game industry, artists would make their living teaching, right? I teach, but I teach for, it's like a passion of mine. There was burnout, from teaching. And that was one of the things they would say, don't teach because you'll lose all your passion for what you do because, you're doing it all the time. Right. So, how is that burnout affect you? And what are some of the ways that you keep yourself motivated? Because, and this is the linchpin to this question, environment involves so many small pieces at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, what are the ways that that you kind of keep yourself on point, or if you get off track and you do get burnout, get yourself back?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think this is the big thing for artists is like trying to figure out like how to deal with burnout.
Mm.
I am in the middle of a sort of burnout patch at the moment. I
Yeah.
thought I'd come out of it, but then it sort of hit me again, and I was like, ah. So for me, I've kind of learned that if I'm burnt out, I just need to embrace the burnout, and it means that I've done too much, taken too much on.
Mm.
Um, and so if you can afford to not do the things that have caused the burnout, so for me it was trying to make YouTube videos and try and make a 3D project, and I was starting to get a little bit sort of feeling under pressure, not because anyone had made me feel under pressure except
Yeah.
for myself.
Yeah.
Very self-inflicted. And so for this particular bout of burnout that I'm going through, I have decided that I'm going to binge watch Walking Dead, and I'm going to play Animal Crossing. So I've like totally regressed. But obviously this can't go on forever. But my plan is, this is my grand plan, is to go visit my mum this coming weekend, take 4 days off, and then come back, and I expect I will be ready to go by then, because I'll have had, basically like 2 or 3 weeks off by that point.
That's genius. We're going to actually pull that quote out. Binge watch until you're actually burnt out of binge watching.
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
Which can happen. I mean, I have, that's embrace the burnout and, go burn out on something else. I love it.
Yeah. So that is just sort of the thing that at least for now I'm learning, is to embrace the burnout. And I know it can be hard, like if you're in education or you're trying to, you've got deadlines to meet, it's just the worst. And sometimes, like a lot of people say, like push through the burnout, and sometimes you have to. But I think if you push through the burnout, you can just make it worse, or it'll come back and hit you twice as hard a few weeks later.
Yeah.
So I think you just kind of have to let yourself go away from it for a bit, until you begin to crave it again. Whether that's like doing a different form of art, like for me, I really enjoy oil painting, or just sort of doing 2D doodles, like on photo bashes in my spare time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of hard when you have a deadline and you need to like force yourself to get back into it. But burnout is such a massive struggle for everyone, and I think you do just eventually begin to accept it. It's just like a thing that happens.
Yeah, I love that. And burning out to Walking Dead, that might be, there's got to be neurosis that at the other side of that. Because
yeah, you come out of it and it's just like, yes, I hate Walking Dead now, and now I love art again.
Yeah, I don't know how many people do you have to watch die, and
Yeah,
especially main characters die. Like they kill them off regularly.
You just watch the writing get slowly worse and worse, and you're just like, wow, I'm literally watching the writers burn out right now too.
I love that. I'm sure that's part of it. How long have they been going on that? They've been going for a long time.
Too long.
I think that's funny. All right, well, that sounds like a great place for us to put a cap in this. Let me ask everybody who's here, anybody have any questions that they've got that we haven't answered? The goal for me today was to introduce you guys to Anya and introduce you to her work and into this field. We did take a brief look at 3D Coat. We looked at the diorama, but I think Courtney hit it on the head, which is that, today one of the things that really struck me was just the planning and the layout and then just creating a scene like this, just how to get about and think about it, and keep in mind, this is 8 months of work, not full time, but 8 months of work. So
yeah, these things take time, and you just have to let it happen. Like there's no point in trying to rush stuff like this, because you'll start to hate it.
Yeah. All right. Any questions? Give me a yes, no, guys. And Anya, do you want to put up your ArtStation?
Yes.
And then that way they know where to find you.
I sure can.
In case you ever do any gumroads on hand-painted texturing.
Yeah, I like I've been looking at the ArtStation Pro stuff. So I think I might move to ArtStation Pro and do some blogging on there, maybe. It might be quite good fun to do stuff on there.
Cool. And is these your oil paint in the top left?
Yes.
Sweet.
Some recent things I did. I like to do still lifes.
That's great. Do you work alla prima or layers?
Yeah, alla prima. I'm way too impatient to take the time layering stuff. I have to do it in one sitting or it'll never get done.
That's great. Yep. And Cerie's got one question. Wait, Edison. Edison, I think you had a question, but I'm not quite. I only see the last part of it. Oh, yeah. Do you assemble your models in Unreal Engine or Maya or Max?
Oh, okay. What I tend to do is, for the sake of simplicity, with something that's really like unique, like a diorama, there's not much repetition of objects.
Right.
I will set everything up in 3ds Max and set everything to the same pivot. So I can export each thing separately, like the ground and a tree or whatever. But they all have the same pivot, and I can just set everything to the exact same pivot, like space in Unreal Engine, and it all just all snaps together exactly how I wanted it to. And I can sort of model stuff around each other, so everything kind of blends together nicely rather than slapping everything together haphazardly once it's in Unreal Engine.
Got it. All right. And then Cerie's asking, why dioramas? I'll just ask it straight. Why do dioramas is what she asks.
Well, I guess it's kind of like the same reason that I like to work a la prima. I'm quite an impatient person, and I don't really want to spend forever working on big scenes. Dioramas are a really nice way of getting something done relatively quick, making it unique, making it stand out. You can really control exactly how you want everything to look, like color palettes and stuff. If you're working in a big scene, you sort of have to take loads of different camera angles for screenshots. You have to make it work from every single direction, or fail at that and have only like one little bit look good. And then there's no point in making a massive scene because you might only take like 2 screenshots of one bit. So it's just something that's really nice, quick to do. And they definitely catch people's eyes. Like I had the art director at work come up to me the other day and say that I've started a diorama trend, apparently. So people are definitely picking up that dioramas are like, they're really good, like quick, nice little things to do. And they do look cool in a portfolio, like next to each other as well. So yeah, they're just nice and quick and cool looking, I think.
That's great. Edison, I think you're on to a diorama with yours, right? I think that's where you're going with it.
Dioramas are the best.
Cerie, does that answer your question? All right, guys, that's going to cap it. I got one question on you. The painting bottom second row all the way to the left, the tree.
This one.
Yeah. So are you outdoors doing this work? You paint from photography?
So this particular one was just a photo study.
Yep.
I was messing about with hue jitter on brushes. It sort of gives a nice like fake volume to the shape of the branches. Yes.
Okay.
Hue jitter is really great to play with. I definitely recommend it because it gives you some really weird color stuff that you wouldn't expect, and different like layer modes as well. Just like overlaying like exclusion layers and lighten layers and stuff. It's really fun to play with. But I do a little bit of painting outdoors when the weather's better. I'm hoping to go out and do some plein air and stuff.
Good.
But yeah, I wish I could do more of that. Like I wish I could just take Photoshop outside with me.
Yeah. And this is so beautiful. I love the blue going in the back, and is definitely you can see that this is probably where you're getting your color range. Like you're able to work through the color palette, but you have a sense of how something moves in the distance.
Yeah, I got a lot of the colors from this sort of come quite almost accidentally with layer modes and stuff. So even when doing hand painted textures, I will sometimes just like scribble with like a hue jitter brush, get loads of mental colors and overlay them with various layer modes in Photoshop. And I can be like, oh, that's a cool color. That color works. And like sort of throw like weird bits of color in, like the purple just underneath the branch here. Colors that obviously don't exist there, but they just kind of work.
We call that clever monkey style here.
I can roll with that. I like that.
throw it on the wall, and if it sticks, it's art. All
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Anya. It was a pleasure talking to you. Oh, wait,
You're
we
very
got
welcome.
one more question. And they just took a second
Oh, yeah.
to type it. And it says waiting for names. I'm not sure who's asking this, but I'll ask it. It says, do you have any advice for those learning hand-painted stylized texturing? Like good techniques or practices for learning how to paint different types of materials? Any thoughts? Anything that just, a couple of sentences might help direct somebody?
Yeah, for the most part, I guess it would be it sounds obvious, but keep the style consistent. Something I see a lot in like beginner work is they'll paint some wood, like a wood texture with really detailed grain in it, and then they'll paint a rock next to it that's just like flat color, and they just look wrong next to each other. So the main thing I guess I would say is consistency in everything, consistency in color palette, consistency in level of detail, consistency in tile, like texturing, like noise. Just keep everything as consistent as possible. Yeah, there's no like hard fast rules as far as I'm concerned. You do just kind of find your style, but you've got to sort of learn to keep it consistent and avoid making stuff too noisy and overwhelming,
Cool.
I guess.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining me. And you know where to find Anya on ArtStation. Make sure you head over there, follow. I think there's follow or like, or head over there and send her some love. And Anya, again, thanks so much.
That's okay. Thank you very much for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. All right. I'll talk to you soon, I'm sure. Oh, there's...
Yeah, great.
Wait, we got to let the weekend warriors go. It's not even the weekend. Gosh. All right. See you guys. See Anya.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.